Okay. Now, the last thing that we're going to do today is give you the process by which to develop your purpose statement. And we have begun working on this process a few classes ago, but I admittedly want to admit that we have really not had the adequate time to do this in a manner by which it really needs to be done. So here is what we're going to do today in light of the time frame that we have, and in light of the fact this will be our last class until we recycle, and then there will be some who will be going into another class beginning next Sunday. Wednesday, as you all know, we won't meet because of the GPA program, and then next Sunday we will be meeting it as our new classes. Here's what you need to know about the new classes. Those who will be going to the church history class, the meeting place for that class will be here in the same venue, okay? Your class will be here. Our Discovering God's Purpose class will be meeting in the new Family Life Center, the main room, okay? So the next time we convene, those who are the new family, those who are in the church history class will be meeting here. Discovering God's Purpose class will be meeting in the new Family Life class. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. Teaching the church history class with lead teacher will be Brother Gerald Wilkerson, with Brother Ian Nicholson, and I think Brother Watson will be also one of the teachers in that class. Okay? Any other questions? In our Discovering God's Purpose class, the class guides for that class will be myself, Brother Bailey, and Brother Rangel. We will be your class discovering guides. Okay? Any other questions about that before we nail this class down? All right. Now, let's talk about developing our purpose statement. Now, here again, in your book, if you go to chapter 12, I'm going to encourage everybody to do that right now. Chapter 12. And it's five steps in writing a purpose statement. 5 steps in writing a purpose statement. One of the things that I learned, one of the things that has made this process easier for me was to begin doing this process by adapting two methods. Two particular methods that made it easier for me to develop our purpose statement. This is have Iris with us on this morning. Okay? So, in the book, on page 113, Brother Roach gives the instructions on how to write a purpose statement by the following. The first step to writing a purpose statement is to answer the following questions, which deal with the 5 contexts of purpose discovery. Now, the 5 contexts of purpose discovery is essential to developing and writing your purpose statement. Okay? And I have approached it. I found a method that has allowed me to actually do this in a more simplified way, especially after we went through chapter 4 and we began to go through the questions after chapter 4 and how difficult it was for some to come up with some of the key things in your life that was essential for you to be able to develop, first of all, to understand what your true identity was and the characteristics that made you uniquely you. Okay? And so I handed out last couple of classes. Some of you you may not have been here. I've learned that if we begin to track our own personal history, it will actually make it easy for us to be able to identify our giftedness, our strengths, and our weaknesses by looking at our personal history. Our personal history actually gives us a definition of our true identity. Our true identity can be discovered through our personal history. And so I gave us a handout, and Sister Evans, when I went to open that document from the email, I got to talk to you about that. So we'll be ready next time for next time too. I handed out these. I'm going to give us an example. We wanted to use, I gave you a blank copy of a personal timeline where you can begin to develop. Now the author also talks about when it comes to purpose and purpose discovery, there are seasons in our life. Each one of us has seasons. There's a winter season, spring season, fall season of purpose living. And so in this process, what I wanted each one of us to do, depending on what season you're in, to do a personal history, whether in your teen years or your childhood years, your teen years, and then your adult life, where you begin to chart. Oh, here it is. When you begin to chart those things that have occurred in your life that have been deposit-oriented or successes, and then those things that have been withdrawal-oriented in your life that have been painful. And what you'll find out is there are some very key essentials that God will reveal to you about your personal identity. And then from your personal identity, you will be able to make your purpose statement. And we tried to use Peter. How many of you have this sheet in terms of Peter's life? How many don't have it? That many people don't have it? Okay. All right, those who don't, hey, can I get a hand here? For those who don't, continue raising your hand. If we can pass this out. For those who don't. Okay. So, Peter's life reflects what we want to use as an example how God can reveal to us our purpose in life and what He's calling us to do. Okay? Are you out?
We're about 4 or 5 short of this.
Okay. Sister Evans, can you make some other copies? That one copy of her, she'll make some. Okay. Thank you. Now, when we talk about purpose statement, we can also, what I've done is use the process of creating first an I am statement based on modeling the life of Jesus. And the I am statement or purpose statement begins with the idea of understanding that your purpose statement aligns itself or should align itself with your true identity, and out of your true identity, God reveals to you what you're called to do for your purpose. Now, the way we want to do this is I want to show you how important it is. Jesus knew his true identity. Would y'all agree? Jesus knew why he was here on earth. He knew what he was here to do and what he was here to accomplish. And y'all do know Jesus is our example, right? Looking unto Jesus, who is the author and the finisher of our faith. But every person that God has used gets to a point where there's a convergence in their life where everything that person has been gifted to do, the circumstances of their life, both withdrawals and deposits, all come at some point in time at a point where they actually converge. And all of their experiences that they've experienced and the giftedness that they have, there comes a point in time where you see clarity, where with that clarity, you're able to now go about fulfilling what God's purpose is. Now, turn in your Bibles to, not only did Jesus understand this, let's see this in John chapter 1, verse 23. John chapter 1, verse 23. I want to leave each one of us with, today, with the first step of developing a purpose statement, and then when you leave on your own, those who are moving on, you can continue this process. John chapter 1, verse 23. John chapter 1, verse 23. Everybody there? Bible says what?
He said.
Who said?
He said.
And what did he say?
I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness.
And what did he say?
I am the voice.
I am the voice
of one crying in the
of
wilderness.
one calling in the what?
Wilderness.
Who's talking? Anybody know? John the Baptist. Says John the Baptist. Now I'm using another example other than Jesus. Jesus says, I am the truth. I am the dope. I am the bread of life. Jesus identified who he was through this understanding of I am. Now here comes John the Baptist. John the Baptist says again that I am what?
I am the voice.
I am the voice
of one crying in the wilderness.
Of one crying in the wilderness. So your purpose statement serves a couple of purposes for you in your life. First of all, it identifies your true identity, but it also identifies what God has commissioned you to do with your life. Your purpose statement identifies your true identity, as well as it identifies what God has commissioned you to do in your life. Everybody get that? Okay, so the thing that I want us to begin doing is I want you to write down, first of all, 2 strengths. When you think about your own life, and if you go back to chapter 4, when we were looking and we're asking everybody, when we were asking everyone to answer these questions about looking back over your life and looking at the successes that you've had and the failures that you had, y'all remember that exercise? Remember how in some cases that was kind of difficult to do? That's why I came up with the timeline. Sometimes, if you go back and just do a reflective account of your life, whether it's teens, whether it's adults, or whether it's childhood, look at the successes, and from that success, there will be a pattern, and you can extract from that at least 2 things that you can identify as being strengths. Everybody see that? Then likewise, well, we'll talk about the other. But I want you to identify right now, the best of your ability, 2 strengths. And again, this morning, I'm not expecting you to be all conclusive. This will be an ongoing process for you, but you'll have the process by which to continue, okay? So identify two strengths, and then we're going to put it into a statement. I'm going to show you what it is. Two deposit areas in your life. Two deposit areas in your life. Now, let me frame it this way too. When you think about your new self-love characteristics of yourself, think about your true identity as it relates to your new self-love. Your new self. Identify two strengths based on your new self. Two strengths based on your new self. Okay? So, and here's what we're going to do with that. Write a statement. My name is fill in the blank. I am a man, woman, sent by God namely two strengths that you've identified. All right. Here's kind of what we're going to start. There's three steps. When you look at what Brother Roach has done, the first step in this process will begin to help you. It will begin to help you craft your entire purpose statement. This is the first part of that process. Identifying just two strengths from your new self. My name is Randy Jackson. I am.
What's your two strengths?
No, it should be flipped. That's right. It should be flipped. I am a man and woman. I am a man and woman of God, creative, impactful, sent by God, and I am more than a conqueror. All right, y'all got that?
so would it, Brother Jackson, would it be, I am a blank, blank man or woman sent by God?
That's what it is. I am the two strings. Sent by God. I am a blank, blank man, woman of God. I am a blank, blank, the two strings. No. I am blank, blank, and
A blank, blank.
I am a.
You did say that.
Man, woman. Yeah. Now, sent to God. And I'm more than a conqueror. All right. Everybody got that?
We're with you, Brother Jackson.
Okay. Now, you're going to add a third line to this next step. Okay? You're going to add a third line in this statement, which is going to actually deal with one of the withdrawals that you have identified. My name is Randy Jackson. I am a man, woman, sent by God, and I am blank, blank, blank. Blank, blank, blank. But this time, the third blank, when we look back over Peter's life and his timeline, what you'll notice is when God called Peter, y'all remember we spent an extensive amount of time in looking at the context of your calling? And when Jesus met Peter, he met him when he was doing what? He was fishing. And then God called Peter, and God said to Peter that I'm going to take what you're doing, right? But take what you're doing. You're a fisherman. You are a fisherman, but I'm going to make you a fisherman of men. All right? But now notice, as Peter begins to live that out in his life, there is some highs and lows that he goes through. And each one of those highs and lows can be identified in terms of deposits and withdrawals in his life. And each one of those lows had to do with significant emotional events. We all have had significant emotional events that have affected us in such a way that it has affected how we see ourselves. And in some cases, how we have come to determine who we are or our identity. And the thing that we need to understand that God does is he uses every event in our life to reveal to us what he already knows about us or what he has called us to do in terms of our purpose and our calling. So with every negative event that he has, God creates in our lives too. If you take time actually to watch it and track it, he'll create an equal and opposite significant emotional event to cancel the one out that caused you the pain in your life. Did y'all hear that? God will. That's why it's important to own what it is that has occurred in your life. Because if you never own it, you actually forfeit the workings of God that he's trying to work out in you, and actually to transform the pain into his purpose. And so this next blank is finding one area of weakness that you can think back as you do your timeline, And you can find it. That's why it's so important to accurately do your old self-love assessment correctly. Because it makes it easier for you to actually come up with the very thing that may have been actually continuing to try to block your purpose in your life. Okay? So, when you, like for me, my new self-love is that of atonement. My old self-love is that of abandonment. And one of the things when I track my personal history, what I found is a repeated pattern that would often surface in terms of disengagement would oftentimes lead to lack of clarity or focus, lack of focus. Whenever I took the time, whenever I focus on anything, I'm really unstoppable at what it is that I'm doing.
Amen. Amen.
But my issue has been that I will engage in something that would not actually focus on that thing to the extent of seeing it through. Okay? So, God, in living out my true identity and my purpose, actually, not only am I atoned, but now I approach everything with laser-like focus.
Yes, sir.
When it comes to accomplishing the thing. Okay? So, here is the next thing, and again, I wanted to mention, when we go through this the second time around, we'll have, for those who are going through the second time around, we'll do this, we'll have the time to spend to do this with the necessary time that it takes to really get it, to be effective with it. Okay? So, notice what God did with Peter. Peter failed, but before he failed, God gave him a sense of his true identity, right? Y'all remember Matthew chapter 16? That Jesus said, "Who the Son of Man say that I, Son of Man, am?" And he went through that dialogue with his disciples. And Peter spoke up, and he says, "Thou art the what? Christ, Son of the living God." And then Jesus says, "Blessed are thy, Simon Bar-Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this unto thee." In other words, Peter didn't get this. He didn't get it from what men said, nor did he get it from himself. But he says, "Flesh and blood didn't reveal this unto thee, but it was my Father who art in heaven." This was a revelation given to Peter in that moment. And based on that revelation, notice what happens next. Based on this heavenly identity, God says to Peter, or Jesus says to Peter, "Blessed art thou, Simon Peter, for thou art, blessed art thy Simon Bar-Jonah, for thou art what? Peter, and upon this rock I'm going to build my church." Christ changed Peter's identity in that moment, calling him a rock. Okay? Before his personal encounter or significant life event that caused him to deny Jesus 3 times. Now look on the timeline of Peter and notice what God does in terms of taking our weakness and making it a strength. Peter denies Jesus, 3 times? And then God created another significant emotional event to cancel out the previous withdrawal event. Look at the top of your line where it says the risen Jesus meets Peter while fishing. Y'all remember that? When he came back? And what did the conversation consist of when Jesus met Peter this time? What did the conversation consist of? Jesus and Peter. What did Jesus ask Peter? He said what? Okay, yeah. Do you love me? All right? What did Peter say? Y'all don't remember the story? Because of time. Jesus asked him, Peter, do you love me? He said, yeah, Lord, I love you. And then Jesus came back and said, Peter, do you love me? Lord, yeah, you know I love you. And then Jesus came back one more time. Peter, do you love me? And Peter, out of disgust, now notice what is happening. Jesus comes to him 3 times with the same question. Why do you suppose that he came 3 times? How many times did he deny? He denied him 3 times. But notice what is happening in Jesus approaching him this time. It was necessary for him to approach him at the same area and point that was bringing about the most shame that he had occurred in his life. But in this process, Jesus is letting him know. Jesus is letting him know that it's okay. My love for you have not failed. And so, the significant emotional withdrawal in his life at that time now is canceled out. Peter can go forth and actually fulfill and live out his true identity.
Yeah.
And so now notice Peter's calling and his purpose. Peter leaves that point, and if you go over to Acts chapter 4, you can see Peter actually confronting the same people that he was back at a couple of years earlier where he denied. Before the Pharisees and the chief magistrates, where he denied Jesus, he goes now in chapter 4 of Acts, we see Peter boldly declaring who Jesus is. So, here's the thing I want to end us with. I'm going to provide for those who are moving on a process by which you can go back. I'll have this Wednesday for you, right? How you can go back and write your purpose statement based on, you need to go look at chapter 4 and the questions in chapter 4, where you can identify 2 your strengths and then 1 weakness. And see, the weakness I want to mention before I close, the weakness is that identifying that thing that has been actually blocking you. And what you do is reframe that weakness with a deposit. For instance, if I had a weakness of being arrogant because of overcompensating, or a home base of abuse, I may come back with, I'll turn that into humility. That third blank. Or if I had a weakness of uncertainty, like I did, that now becomes the strength of laser-like focus. And so, again, Wednesday, what I'll do for those who are moving on, I will provide a handout for you with more clarity than what we did today, so that you can go on and complete your purpose statement. And then for those who will be coming into class, when we get to this portion in the class next time around, this will make a whole lot more sense to you, and then we'll be able to do this more effectively. For those who came in late, you need to know that Wednesday we don't meet as a class because of GPA. Sunday we will begin our new class, and that class will be meeting over in the Family Life Center. Okay, the history class will be meeting